not going to want to miss this episode. I have Alfonso Cuadro. He's the godfather of real estate. He owns over 600 doors across the country and in the U.S. We're going to talk about how to get into multifamily, what to look for, pitfalls to avoid. Really excited about this. You don't want to miss it. And stay to the end. We're going to have some nice things, resources to pass along. So without further ado, Alfonso, how are you?
What's happening, Darren?
Oh,
You say you had some goodies for them. I'm going to encourage for everyone here to stay all the way to the end because on this episode, we're not going to be dropping nuggets. We're going to be dropping bombs. And by the time people are done this episode, they're going to know exactly what to do, especially in this day and age.
I love it. So Alfonso, I know a little bit about your background. You grew up as a rich kid with wealthy parents, and you were handed everything you have.
So,
Do you
silver
wish
spoon. You forgot about the silver spoon.
so just tell our listeners briefly about your upbringing and how you get into real estate and that big life changing event.
Well, I come from Latin America, El Salvador to be exact. I was in two wars before the age of 9, immigrated to Canada as a landing refugee. I had a tough time integrating into the education system here. Mostly I was bored. They never taught anything that I was really truly passionate about in school. I don't know about you, but it wasn't it really wasn't for me. I felt that everyone was in this box. Actually, when I was 10 years old, I asked my teacher, "What's a mortgage?" And the teacher said, "A mortgage is something you get when you're older." And of course, I could, even at 10 years old, I'm like, that's BS. I mean, it can't just be that something you get when you're older. So I knew I was going to be on my own. Ultimately, I got frustrated and left school. I dropped out of high school at 15 years old. And I went through some dark times, left home, was homeless, spent time on the streets. And, we've all had these dark moments, right? And, it happens to all kinds of people from all, all different parts of life. And for me, I had a life changing moment at 17 when I became a father. And that was incredibly impactful for me. And it was a turning point. And it was the very first time that I discovered purpose. So I got my act together, went back to school, started a business. By the time I was 21, that business was Canada wide. Fell in love with being an entrepreneur, and I said, "This is it. I've made it." Unfortunately, you know, growing up as an immigrant, and the best things my mom could teach me is go to school, get a university degree, and one day you'll buy a house, and you hold on to that house, and you're going to be fine. And so I knew that path wasn't for me, but there was a lack of financial literacy in my household, and no one talked about credit, finances, mortgages. I mean, I never got the mortgage question really answered. To be honest with you, I think I was 17. I still didn't know what a mortgage was, but ultimately that drive of being a father, led me to start a business, and I happened to fall in the right business at the right time in the right industry with the right drive, the right determination, and I was successful. But at 21 years old, I was just spending all the money. I was very much a consumer. And by the time I turned 24, I was negative $1 million. So 21 millions of dollars, and then 24 just about to go bankrupt pretty much. And so I knew I had to change some things. I knew I needed to learn. I needed to learn how to become an actual business person, not just a business person that is thriving only when the times are good. And so, I started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, and I mean those two books were really uh, incredible for me because it really opened up my eyes, and I started reading hundreds of other books. And what I discovered, Darren, was that the wealthiest people in the world, first of all, they have the investor mindset. And that's what I was missing, right? Even though I was successful with my business, I was spending I was spending my money on what whatever you could imagine a 21-year-old would spend their money on. Right, I had a Canada-wide business and I was doing really well for myself. So it went into everything you could imagine, all the cliche things that you could imagine. That was probably me.
Cars, trips,
Yeah,
jewelry, all the, yeah, you
everything,
name it.
all of the above. And so when I realized that, I was a consumer. No one taught me how to be an investor. No one taught me how to take the income that I was earning and reinvest it. It was a big eye-opening experience for me. Then realizing that all the wealthiest people in the world have multiple streams of income, and that was interesting because, even though I was successful in business at such a early age, but I only had that one stream of income. And to me, I was vulnerable, right? Because shortly after 9/11, the industry changed. There was a correction in that industry. There was new competition. People's consumer habits changed. Competition, internet, China. I mean, there was all of these other factors that impacted my business. But because I only had that one stream of income, I was doomed. And so I said, I need multiple streams of income. And then lastly, after doing all my research, I realized that the wealthiest people in the world own real estate. And the combination of business and real estate gives an unfair advantage to the wealthiest people of the world. And I said, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to do real estate. I want to create a secondary stream of income that's indestructible because I never wanted to be in that situation ever again. In a situation like I remember being negative $1 million, walking out of my store. This guy's panhandling for change, and I'm thinking in my mind like, this guy is worth more than I am. He's got nothing, but I'm negative $1 million here. And so I decided to go back and rebuild my business. And what I was going to do this time that I didn't do the first time at 24 years old, I was going to reinvest the profits and really build my real estate portfolio. What I noticed is that none of the wealthiest people, all the biographies and all the wealthiest everything in the families, everything that I was reading about, no one ever was talking about their triplex or their duplex or their single family home. In fact, Warren Buffett doesn't even list his single family home in his net worth statement, you know? So I started thinking about the idea of bigger commercial real estate. And this is how basically I just did what everyone was doing in these books, right? Everyone was going after these big commercial type of properties. And so I had a few limitations in terms of credit and income, which led me into multifamily in the first place. Easier to manage, easier to finance, economy of scale. You spread the risk, and all of those things really attracted me, and that's how I started back 23 plus years ago, and by the time we got to 2008, I was a different animal, right? I had reduced my cost of living. I had already rebuilt my company. I built my real estate portfolio. And I think it was around 2008, 2009, as I started to go into real estate full time, that I actually I sold my first company, and I was financially free, right? I didn't really have to do anything. I just wanted to do stuff. I wanted to build my company. And I thought, this is a gift that I can give a lot of people. This will ultimately be my legacy. Help people get to this moment of financial freedom through real estate. And that's what I've been doing for the past 15 plus years is helping people from all walks of life, young or old, achieve financial freedom because I'm passionate about it. I'm a freedom fighter, Darren. Freedom fighter. I fight for people's financial freedom.
Yeah, and Alfonso, I've been fortunate enough to see you present multiple times, and you're an incredible presenter. So anyone who gets a chance to see Alfonso, I encourage you to check him out. He's across the country all the time. But
I
I hear
appreciate
you
that.
say a lot. Real estate is the greatest wealth building asset, or something along that line. Can you just why do you believe, like a lot of us, why do you believe real estate is such a great wealth building asset compared to other ways to invest?
Well, uh, I'll take you back to the presidential race of 2020 in the US. It was discovered that Donald Trump, okay, love the guy or hate the guy, that we're not even talking about, whether we like him or don't or dislike him or whatever, but it was discovered that he paid $750 in personal income taxes, okay? Now, the world was outraged. If you remember that, Darren, it was all over the media, all over the news. Everyone was outraged. People were talking about it. There was demonstrations, and everyone was, the energy, in my point of view, was flowing the wrong way. What people should have been focused on is something very simple. How can we do that for ourselves? And so this mixture of business and real estate together, having real estate as a business, has is the best way to preserve your capital, right? Because making money is easy, but where are you going to hold your money? Are you going to hold it in the stock market? Well, be prepared to not sleep at night unless you know something like Warren Buffett. That's another story. We're not all Warren Buffetts here. Crypto, my country, where I'm from, El Salvador, decided to invest the country's money into crypto, and it's gone down in value significantly since they made that purchase. So now everyone's upset at the president. Um, there's so many asset classes. Okay, I mean, we can go to a hard asset like gold. Ultimately, that hard asset, you have to store it, and it doesn't provide income, right? I love real estate because it's the best way to hold your wealth. It's the best place to hold it, right? And your number, not only to not to speak about the fact that you're hedging against inflation, right? Because we can make this interview 3 hours long and just talk about fiat currency and how the currency is paper. And so where are you going to, the idea is to make sure you hold its value. Back in 1923, where Germany went through massive hyperinflation, people were paid twice, once at lunch and once after work. Why lunch? Well, they give you the money and then they just would go buy anything. They would go buy anything because by the time the end of the day came, that paper had lost value. So they were holding on to anything. And at the end of the day, they would go and buy anything they could get their hands on with that paper because it was losing value. In Venezuela, the gas, they're going through massive hyperinflation. Gas is subsidized. If you go pump gas in Venezuela, you're going to give the guy cents, money. He can't do anything with that money. If you give the guy a banana, he'll be happy to give you a full tank of gas. So all of these factors, the fact that real estate is a hard asset, the fact that you're hedging against inflation, the fact that it's not paper, it's tangible, you can touch it. You're hedging against a potential money reset. You're hedging against inflation. You're hedging against any other craziness that can happen in this world with cryptos, stock markets, recession, all of that. Real estate is the best place to hold your wealth.
Yeah, and you don't have to put 100% down like most other investments. You can put
Leverage pool.
0 to 30 down.
Yeah. Well, by that, the government and the banks, they're telling you that they believe in this asset class, right? Which is why I love multifamily, because when you buy the ones and twosies, they're saying, well, we're not as comfortable with, we're comfortable with real estate, but we want to make sure that you can pay for this, right? And so the debt to income ratio comes into play versus buying larger multifamilies like me, where it's mostly focused on the asset. I'm very secondary to the financing equation, but they're focused on the performance of the asset. And if it makes sense, they'll give me as many mortgages as possible, right? and to have the ability to leverage and have your tenants pay down your mortgage. That's sexy, Darren.
Very sexy. Uh, so you started out and you did some joint ventures and stuff, and then you grew. But like, can you tell me how you scaled your business? How were you able to grow that rapidly, that fast, to that big of numbers? And I think you were actually
Yeah.
probably a little bit bigger last year. I think you unloaded some when the market was high. How'd you grow that fast? How do you scale business, and how do people copy you?
Yeah. So number one, you got to know what you're doing, right? Before the podcast, we were talking about kind of the best things to invest in. The first thing is yourself, right? If the reason most people don't take action is because they lack the confidence. And in my view, if you educate yourself, that is one way of becoming more confident with the subject matter and any or whatever it is that you're doing. Second, you need to expand your mindset, right? If you don't believe that you can do it, you will never be able to grow, right? You may look at a building and you're like, well, that's for the big guys, right? If you put it far away from you, it will always be far away from you. And so, we believe in expanding mindset. So you now can tap into more of what you're capable of, and you get anchored to new numbers. So educate yourself, expand the mindset, put in the right knowledge, and ultimately take action. And the actions are going to be reflective on how much potential you think you have, right? And so we become anchored to like all kinds of numbers, right? October 26th, people are like, oh, the interest rates only went up 0.50. How easy do we become anchored to numbers? Because we were like 100 basis points, 100 basis points, 100 basis points, 0.50. Oh, and so we become anchored to these numbers, and you have to rejig the anchoring in your mind. And to look, when you look at big numbers, when you ask the question, how do I scale? I went after big deals, right? And the reason I went after big deals is because number one, I I I injected knowledge and education, mentorship, coaching into me, and I invested into myself. Now I have the confidence. I created new anchoring, so I expanded my mindset on what is possible for me. And then ultimately, I took massive action. And that action resulted in the first deal, the first big deal. Like my first biggest deal was like a 7 unit apartment building, 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't even sleep at night. If Darren, if I told you that I stayed up all night, I wouldn't be lying. And the second one was a 10 unit, and then a 15 unit, and a 20 unit, and a 30 unit. So I'm always consistently living in expansion, right? To now that I'm looking at deals, they're like 100 units, 200 units, 300 units. And so it's easier to